You need to tear it down, all of it. The woman in the navy blazer stood at the edge of my construction site like she owned the ground beneath her expensive shoes. This structure violates our community standards, and you have 14 days to comply or we'll take legal action. I looked up from the lumber I was sorting, hammer still in my hand. Lady, I don't know who you think you are, but this is private property, my property, and you can take your 14-day notice and shove it straight up your architectural review board. Her face went red. I'm Diane Mercer, president of Cascade View Estates HOA. And that house, she pointed at my half-built dream home like it was a pile of garbage, is an eyesore that's destroying our property values. We have rights. Rights? I laughed, hard. You have rights to land you don't own? That's a new one. She pulled out a folder, slapped it against her palm. Section 9, Article 4 of our Compatibility Clause gives us authority over any development that impacts our visual integrity. And your little construction project here? It impacts everything. Then I guess you're going to have a problem, I said, stepping closer. Because I'm not stopping. Not for you. Not for your fake authority. And definitely not for some HOA that thinks they can bully people into submission. Her smile was cold, practiced. We'll see about that, Mr. Blackwell. We'll see. She turned and walked away, her two goons trailing behind like trained dogs. I didn't know it then, but that conversation was the beginning of a war I never asked for. A war where she'd steal my materials in the dead of night to build her own getaway cabin. A war where she'd try to destroy my reputation, my business, my entire life, just to force me off land that was legally, rightfully mine. But here's the thing about bullies with badges and clipboards. They never expect you to fight back with cameras, lawyers, and evidence that could put them in prison. And that's exactly what I did. 2 years earlier, I inherited the land from my grandfather. A little over 3 acres just west of Bend, Oregon, tucked against the juniper-covered foothills where the high desert meets the Cascade Range. A pocket of peace nestled just outside the border of Cascade View Estates, the HOA-controlled suburban masterpiece next door. My parcel wasn't inside their gates, and that fact alone made it precious to me. No committee meetings, no architectural review boards, no beige-only fence mandates, just dirt, sage, sky, and me. After nearly 15 years building custom homes for clients all across Central Oregon, I'd finally returned to build my own. This wasn't just any project. It was my house, my future. 2 stories, open timber beams of Douglas fir, a wine cellar sunk deep into the volcanic rock, a workspace for my design business, and a wraparound deck that would give me the kind of sunsets developers could only fake in their brochures. The foundation had been poured, the framing schedule was locked. Materials were arriving in batches, specialty insulation, custom fabricated window sets, structural steel, even precast concrete panels I'd had delivered from Portland. I was living in a trailer on site, nothing fancy but functional. There was no sense paying for a rental when I had a perfectly good roof over my head, wheels or not. I'd reinforced the shipping container we used for tool and material storage with a padlock system, and I rigged up motion-activated lights that would have made a prison warden jealous. This was my fortress of solitude, until the HOA came knocking. It started innocuously enough, 3 people walking up the gravel path while I was checking lumber tags near the edge of the lot. I knew trouble the moment I saw their jackets. Navy blue with that painfully gold emblem. Cascade View Estates HOA. The kind of branding that practically screamed, "I've memorized the bylaws." In front walked a woman in her early 50s. High-end haircut that had never seen a wind gust. Manicured fingernails perfectly unsuited for the terrain. She wore a navy blazer with a gold HOA pin on the lapel that caught the afternoon light like a sheriff's badge. She carried a slim folder tucked under one arm like a clipboard of doom. "Can I help you?" I said, keeping my voice polite but neutral. The woman didn't even answer at first. She looked around my lot with the intensity of a code enforcement officer sniffing for mildew. "Jason Blackwell?" she finally asked. "That's me. I'm Diane Mercer." President of the Cascade View Estates Homeowners Association. She gestured to the two men behind her, both in matching windbreakers. We're here to assess a concern. I didn't laugh. I wanted to. This property is not part of your HOA. Yes, she replied, flipping open her folder. But it does border our community. And per our Architectural Compatibility Clause, Section 9, Article 4, we reserve the right to address developments that affect the visual integrity of Cascade View. I stared at her. That clause doesn't apply to private parcels outside your jurisdiction. She smiled the way people smile before they flip a Monopoly board. The roof line of your structure is already visible from Ridgeline Drive. The materials you've used, timber, exposed steel, aren't consistent with our design language. And this, she gestured vaguely toward the construction mess like it was roadkill, compromises the aesthetic of our boundary. I pulled a laminated copy of the property deed from the folder I kept in the trailer, held it out for her. This lot was recorded in 1972. It predates your HOA by 30 years. I have full municipal permits and structural engineering sign-offs. I don't answer to your board. Diane gave the deed a cursory glance, barely 2 seconds, then handed it back without acknowledging it. We'll be issuing a formal notice. In the meantime, we recommend halting material deliveries and pausing work. No. I said plainly. Behind her, one of the men, a guy in his 40s with an HOA name tag clipped to his vest, coughed into his hand like he'd expected me to roll over. Diane narrowed her eyes slightly. You're living quite close to our community, Mr. Blackwell. We have an obligation to protect our residents' quality of life. Visual pollution is no less impactful than noise or litter. You'll find that we don't take this lightly. I let silence do the talking. Eventually, she and her HOA crew turned back toward the paved road that led up the hill to the gates of Cascade View Estates. I watched them go boots on gravel, papers in hand, like some twisted ecclesiastical tribunal. I didn't know it yet, but that walk wasn't a retreat, it was reconnaissance. The next morning, I came out to check the supply inventory and noticed something small. 4 insulation panels were missing. Not blown away, not misplaced, gone. At first, I thought maybe my guys had stored them differently, but after a full walkthrough, I knew better. I chalked it up to a mistake. Maybe a miscount. No big deal. 2 days later, one of the window crates was half empty, then a whole pallet of concrete vanished overnight, and that's when it hit me. This wasn't incompetence. Someone was robbing me. Someone who didn't think I'd notice. Someone who maybe thought I wouldn't fight back. They were wrong. I didn't like coincidences, especially not the kind that cost money. When a few insulation panels disappeared, I tried to stay rational. Maybe a supplier miscounted. Maybe one of the guys reorganized the stacks and forgot to tell me. But when an entire pallet of concrete vanished hundreds of pounds of specialty mix I'd ordered weeks in advance, I knew I wasn't dealing with an honest mistake. Someone was coming onto my site at night. And they weren't shy about helping themselves. I went over every inch of the lot, looking for tire tracks or footprints, but the wind had pushed enough dust around to blur anything useful. The gate chain had been unclipped and refastened, which meant whoever it was either had bolt cutters or a key. Neither possibility made me feel better. I filed a police report, because that's what law-abiding people do. Though the officer who came out looked at the empty pallet space like he was trying to picture how concrete could accidentally walk away, he took notes, gave me the usual, "We'll look into it," and drove off. I knew that meant I'd never hear from him again unless the thief left a confession taped to the cruiser windshield. That evening, while checking the perimeter before locking up, I spotted movement near the container. Just a shadow at first. Someone shifting behind the stacked lumber. I rounded the corner fast, ready to catch whoever was dumb enough to come back while I was still awake. But it wasn't a stranger. It was one of my crew members. "Tyler, what the hell are you doing back here?" He jumped like he'd touched a live wire, then tried to settle his face into something calm. "Oh, hey boss. Sorry, thought I left my gloves." "Your gloves aren't in the container," I said, "and that lock wasn't open when I walked by 10 minutes ago." He shrugged, a little too casually. "Must have slipped." Everything in me prickled. I didn't accuse him. I wasn't ready to believe I'd hired a thief. But the timing was off, and the way he kept glancing over his shoulder told me something stunk. After he left, I checked the ground. Fresh scuff marks near the container door. Faint, but they're like someone had been testing the latch or prying it. I didn't sleep much that night. When the dark stretches of land around you suddenly feel watched, the silence doesn't calm you. It whispers. By the next morning, more materials were gone. A bundle of copper pipes, expensive ones, and 2 engineered beams that were damn near impossible to lift without equipment. I walked the lot in slow disbelief. Whoever was doing this had gotten bold. Too bold. And that meant they felt safe. I wasn't about to let them stay that way. I spent most of the day installing the kind of security system paranoid millionaires use. Tiny cameras tucked into the corners of the trailer, inside the fake vent panel, under the eaves of the temporary roof near the workbench. They were small, nearly invisible, motion-triggered, and backed up to an off-site cloud account that I locked down so tightly the NSA would have been proud. I knew that if someone was stepping onto my property with bad intentions, I'd catch them this time. Late in the afternoon, while repositioning one of the lights, my nearest neighbor, old Greg, who lived past the ridge, pulled up in his dusty pickup to drop off a drill bit he'd borrowed months ago. "Saw something strange 2 nights back," he said as he handed it over. "Black Mercedes SUV. Had one of those gold HOA stickers. Rolled out your way real slow around midnight. Thought maybe you were doing a night delivery." My jaw twitched. "HOA? Out here?" He nodded. Had one of those little flags on the antenna too. Looked official. I thanked him, though everything inside me was simmering. So, the HOA was showing up at night. Of course they were. Diane and her trio of matching windbreakers didn't get the answer they wanted during the day. So now they were circling like vultures, looking for a carcass they could claim belonged to them. That night, after I locked the padlock on the container and double-checked every camera angle, I sat in the trailer, listening to the wind pass through the junipers. A strange mix of anger and anticipation pulled in me. The losses weren't random. They weren't opportunistic. Someone was picking through my materials deliberately, and I was beginning to suspect the break-ins weren't happening despite the HOA. They were happening because of it. All I had to do now was wait. And when they came back, and I knew they would, my cameras would be watching. They came back on the 3rd night after the cameras went live. It was close to 2:45 a.m. when the alert pinged my phone. Motion detected near container. I rolled out of bed, adrenaline hitting like a freight train, and pulled up the live feed on my laptop. There they were. 2 figures, both in HOA jackets, working fast under the weak glow of a flashlight wrapped in red tape. They moved like they'd done it before. One of them popped the lock using a Slim Jim. The others started dragging out the remaining insulation panels like they had a shopping list. Then a 3rd figure entered the frame. An SUV rolled up just inside camera view, headlights off. The driver door opened. I paused the feed, zoomed in, enhanced the image. Diane fucking Mercer. Her perfectly pressed navy blazer with that gold HOA pin looked ridiculous at that hour. She pointed at the trailer like a commander giving orders. One of the men turned to her and said something, no audio, but she waved her hand in a sharp arc, and they got back to work. I sat there frozen, teeth clenched so hard my jaw ached. This wasn't random theft. This was organized, sanctioned. She was orchestrating it like she had every right. But the kicker? The guy loading the insulation had a name tag. Full name visible when he turned toward the camera for half a second. Eric Bronson. I didn't know it yet, but that name would crack this whole thing open like a cheap foundation. I spent the morning cataloging the footage, timestamping every interaction, backing it up in triplicate. Then, I went online and started digging. Public records, local court archives, licensing boards. It didn't take long. Eric Bronson had a felony conviction from 6 years back, contractor fraud and grand larceny. He'd served time. He wasn't allowed to operate in any profession that gave him direct access to private property. He damn sure wasn't supposed to be anywhere near HOA enforcement. I called my attorney Sophie Warren and sent her the footage. She called back 15 minutes later. "I'm going to say something I don't say often," she said. "You're sitting on a civil and criminal jackpot." We scheduled a police report for that afternoon and started compiling the file for the district attorney. Meanwhile, I stayed quiet. No public statements. No confrontations. I wanted to see if they'd come back for more. And more importantly, I wanted to know where everything was going. I got my answer 2 days later. Sophie sent me a link forwarded from a contact in real estate licensing. A small LLC named Ponderosa Ridge Developments had filed a permit in neighboring Deschutes County to build a luxury guest home on a private parcel near Tumalo Creek. The permit mentioned repurposed premium construction materials, including Douglas fir beams, specialty concrete panels, and architectural window sets, a description that matched mine to the nail. Ponderosa Ridge was registered under a shell company, which led to another until eventually the trail hit a name I'd seen before: Robert Mercer, Diane's husband. I stared at the screen like it owed me an apology. It wasn't just theft. It wasn't just HOA bullying. It was embezzlement, fraud, abuse of position. They were looting my site to build their own getaway cabin, probably planning to flip it under some green-washed bullshit name like Eco Lux Mountain Retreat. I wanted to be sure. I took a drive out to the address on the permit and parked about 100 yards out with a zoom lens, and there it was, a half-built structure, crews on site hauling beams. I recognized the windows. Identical. The arched concrete panel I'd designed myself was there in their driveway, still wrapped in a tarp with a faded shipping label. I zoomed in. My name, my delivery address. I took 50 photos. Then drove back with my heart punching against my ribs like it wanted out. I didn't even feel angry anymore. I felt something colder, something clean. The way concrete feels before it sets. Final and permanent. We filed a second police report that night along with video, stills, and documentation tracing the HOA's accounts straight to Ponderosa Ridge. And the cherry on top? I still hadn't told Diane I knew. I wanted her to step in it with both feet. I didn't go nuclear right away. I wanted Diane to keep thinking she was in control. That way, when the hammer dropped, it would hit her clean between the eyes. I spent the next 48 hours tightening my case. Sophie filed formal complaints with the county sheriff's office, the licensing board, and the state attorney general. But even before any warrants came down, Diane made her next move. The morning after we submitted the evidence, I found a letter taped to the gate of my lot. Not mailed, taped. The paper was folded in plastic, printed on HOA letterhead, and filled with bureaucratic snake oil. It accused me of ongoing visual obstruction, unauthorized surveillance of community areas, and this one was rich. Deliberate entrapment of HOA employees. Deliberate entrapment. The only thing I trapped was her goon squad loading my materials like raccoons into a garbage truck. But it didn't stop there. That same week, the HOA's internal blog lit up with a new post titled, "The Danger Next Door, What You're Not Being Told About the Blackwell Build." It accused me of being an unlicensed contractor, known for aggressive behavior, and my personal favorite, possibly linked to a construction scam in Portland. My phone rang less that week. 3 pending clients paused their contracts. 1 canceled outright. Subcontractors started asking questions. One supplier even sent me a courtesy audit notice just to cover their own ass. The stink Diane was spreading was catching. I met Sophie in her office, dropped a folder on her desk labeled defamation package, and sat down without a word. "You're going for the throat?" she asked, flipping through the printouts. "They tried to ruin my name," I said. "They dragged my business into it. Time to return the favor." We filed the counterclaim the next morning. A civil lawsuit for defamation, loss of income, reputational damage, and business interference. Sophie didn't hold back. She attached statements from past clients, proof of license and insurance, screenshots of the HOA blog, and a financial breakdown showing exactly how much I'd already lost in paused contracts. Over $30,000. And the cherry on top? I filed it personally against Diane Mercer, not just the HOA. She wasn't going to hide behind the board like it was a riot shield. This was her war, her name, her lies. By Friday, I received a cease and desist letter from the HOA's legal rep. They demanded I remove unauthorized surveillance footage from my possession, apologize publicly for slandering HOA staff, and retract my defamation suit. I sent them back a 3-word reply: see you in court. But that wasn't the end of it. The following Monday, I woke up to find my truck's tires slashed. All 4. A note was tucked under the windshield wiper: drop the suit or lose more than rubber. I took photos, filed another police report, added it to the case file. Sophie was furious. This is witness intimidation. We're escalating. By Tuesday, 2 more clients had pulled out. One cited community concerns. The other just said they were going in a different direction. My voicemail filled with blocked numbers, silent hang-ups, heavy breathing. One message that just said, "You should have listened." I stopped sleeping more than 3 hours a night. Every creak in the trailer felt like an attack. Every headlight on the road felt like surveillance. One evening, I walked out to find the shipping container's lock smashed open. Nothing was taken, but everything inside had been thrown around. Tools scattered, plans torn, a message spray-painted on the inside wall. Last warning. I sat on the steps of the trailer that night, head in my hands, staring at the construction site I'd poured my life into. For the first time since this started, I felt the edges of defeat creeping in. Not because I was wrong, but because the system, this beautiful, terrible, broken system, was letting them win through sheer attrition. Sophie called that night. Her voice was tight. "Jason, I need to be honest with you. The HOA's legal team is filing motions to delay discovery. They're burying us in paperwork. And without a smoking gun beyond the video, which their lawyers are claiming is inconclusive, this could drag out for months. Maybe a year. I can't afford that. I know." Long pause. "What do I do?" She exhaled. "Honestly, you could settle, walk away, take what you can get, and rebuild somewhere else." I stared out at the half-finished house. Or we fight. But Jason, this isn't about right and wrong anymore. It's about who can outlast who. I didn't answer. I just hung up and sat in the dark. And then, at 11:32 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Check your email. You're going to want to see this." I opened my laptop. New message. No subject line, just an attachment. A scanned document titled Cascade View Estates, Board Meeting Minutes, Confidential. I opened it, and what I saw made my blood run cold, then hot with vindication. It was internal HOA correspondence, emails between Diane and the board treasurer, planning documents outlining a strategy to pressure non-compliant adjacent landowners into compliance or sale. My property was listed by name, and the kicker? A budget line item, legal intimidation fund, $50,000. They'd been planning this for over a year. There were more emails. Diane referring to me as the bottleneck. Robert Mercer asking about material acquisition timelines. Even a memo suggesting they could create financial pressure through defamation if direct. Negotiation fails. It was conspiracy. In writing, I forwarded everything to Sophie. She called back 3 minutes later, voice sharp with energy. "Where did you get this?" Anonymous tip. "This changes everything. If we can authenticate this, and I think we can, it proves premeditated fraud. The court will have to reconsider. Can we file it?" "We're filing it tonight." 2 days later, we were back in court with an emergency motion. Sophie presented the documents to the judge. His expression didn't change, but I saw him make several notes. Diane's attorney tried to argue the documents were obtained improperly and should be excluded. The judge cut him off. "Counselor, if these documents are authentic, the method of discovery is secondary to the content. I'm admitting this evidence pending verification." He looked at Diane. Miss Mercer, did you authorize the creation of a legal intimidation fund? She hesitated. Just for a second. I would need to review the board's financial records. That's not an answer. Her attorney jumped in. Your Honor, Miss Mercer wasn't solely responsible for, but she signed off on it. According to this memo, the judge closed the file. I'm ordering a full audit of the HOA's financial records, and I'm reinstating Mr. Blackwell's restraining order with expanded scope. No contact, no enforcement, no public statements. The gavel fell. Diane went pale. Her attorney looked like he'd been hit by a truck, and just like that, the breaking point became the breakthrough, because someone, somewhere, had finally had enough of the HOA's lies, and they'd handed me the proof I needed to end it. It started unraveling faster than I expected. Within 72 hours of the court filing, the county prosecutor's office reached out to Sophie. They wanted everything: videos, permits, financial connections, even the off-site photos of the Tumalo Creek build. She handed them the full file like a tray of loaded evidence. By the end of the week, Diane Mercer was officially under investigation for grand larceny, fraud, and abuse of authority. But the real fireworks came when the name Eric Bronson resurfaced in a wider investigation. Turns out, I wasn't the only one who'd had a run-in with him. Another local contractor stepped forward with a similar story. Materials confiscated from a site bordering another HOA-run property, also connected to Cascade View. Bronson had been running this little side operation for years, and Diane had known. She hadn't just turned a blind eye, she'd employed him through a fake contractor compliance program issued by the HOA itself. What made it even better? Their internal compliance list was nothing more than a spreadsheet with no legal basis signed off by Diane and her husband. Investigators raided the HOA office 2 weeks after the emergency motion. It wasn't a glamorous raid, no battering rams or black vans, just 4 very serious people in plain suits carrying evidence boxes and laptops. But when they left, they had copies of the entire financial ledger, the security gate logs, and allegedly a USB drive containing private communications between Diane and Ponderosa Ridge's contractor team. That afternoon, Cascade View's board called an emergency meeting. It didn't go the way they'd hoped. Homeowners had started to realize they were being used. Dues misappropriated. Reserve funds drained into side projects. Property values tied to a private land war none of them had signed up for. Several residents stormed out. A few threatened lawsuits of their own. Then someone leaked the email where Diane called them short-sighted sheep with granite countertops. Her resignation didn't come as a letter, it came as handcuffs. Diane Mercer was arrested in her driveway as she tried to leave town, her Mercedes already half loaded with luggage. The Deschutes County Sheriff's Office charged her with grand theft, wire fraud, criminal conspiracy, falsifying regulatory documents, and hiring a convicted felon in violation of state real estate law. Eric Bronson was picked up the same evening. He caved almost immediately, offering a full confession in exchange for a reduced sentence. His testimony confirmed everything: the thefts, the falsified compliance program, the scheme to erode my reputation, and most damning of all, the plan to push me into foreclosure so they could acquire my land for pennies on the dollar. By the time the first court hearing took place, the HOA had effectively collapsed. The judge froze all HOA-controlled assets pending further audit. Cascade View's legal authority was suspended, its operations handed off to a temporary independent trustee. The community's signage came down. The board was dissolved. Diane was denied bail and remanded to the county detention center. When I showed up to testify, clean shirt, steel boots, folder under my arm, I kept it short. I have no interest in revenge, I told the judge. But I do want every stolen item returned. And I want them to stop pretending this was ever legal. He nodded once. Mr. Blackwell, I think we're past pretending. Over the next month, the legal system did what it was supposed to do, for once. Diane took a plea deal that included 7 years in prison, full restitution, and liquidation of all personal assets, including that little mountain getaway built from my materials. The court ordered its contents seized and auctioned, with the proceeds paid directly to me. Eric Bronson got 4 years, plus mandatory supervision post-release. The HOA's remaining funds were used to pay fines and reimburse homeowners. A class action suit followed. The whole neighborhood was now in open revolt against the very structure they'd once trusted. And me? I was left alone finally to finish my house. No more clipboard parades, no more fake notices, no more thieves and HOA windbreakers, just wood, steel, and sky. I finished the house in silence. No interruptions, no weird late-night noises, no phantom clipboards lurking behind trees. Just the sound of hammers, drills, and my boots on the gravel. And peace. The kind of peace you don't appreciate until someone tries to take it from you. It took another 4 months to wrap construction, but it was worth every hour. The wraparound deck caught sunsets like a movie screen. The cellar stayed perfectly cool year-round. The beams, well, the replacement beams stood tall like the backbone of something earned, not given. After the trial, word got around. People from nearby counties started reaching out. First a trickle, then a steady stream. Most of them had HOA horror stories of their own. Harassment. Extortion disguised as aesthetic enforcement. Fines for dead grass or leaving the garage open for more than 10 minutes. And just like that, my inbox turned into a war archive. That's when the idea hit me. Anti-HOA Build Coalition. I bought the domain that same night. Built the site myself. No frills, just resources, contacts, checklists. I uploaded everything I wish someone had handed me at the beginning. How to read your land use codes. How to detect architectural overreach. How to find your parcel's real legal boundaries. How to bury an HOA in paperwork before they bury you. Within a month, I had a few hundred subscribers, then 1,000. Then, speaking requests started coming in from libertarian homeowner groups, small builder conferences, even local news stations. Turns out, people were dying to hear how someone stared down an HOA with a god complex and came out with their land, their dignity, and their house intact. I didn't do it for attention. But I wasn't going to waste the platform either. So I started offering consultations. One-on-ones with folks in the early stages of similar battles. Helped a couple in Idaho draft a counterclaim against their HOA after they were cited for having non-uniform landscaping on a 5-acre lot. Helped a retired vet in Montana keep his shed after some board member called it a visual obstruction. Even consulted for a tiny house community trying to stay off the radar. It was slow, quiet revenge. One week, I came home to find someone had planted a sign at the entrance to my driveway. At first, I thought it was another HOA holdover, but as I walked up, I saw the words carved in juniper wood, burned deep into the grain. Private land, here we build, we don't confiscate. There was no name, no note, just the sign and a bottle of decent whiskey tucked behind it. I left it there. I finished furnishing the workshop too. Set up a custom drafting station. Got my tools hung with surgical precision. I called it the Black Barn. Inside, I framed a newspaper clipping of the headline that had gone viral after the trial. HOA president sentenced after landowner's viral footage sparked statewide investigation. But the epilogue didn't come until a week later. A letter arrived, handwritten, no return address. Just clean, blocky letters. Dear Mr. Blackwell, you don't know me, but I know Diane. I was married to her for 21 years. Thank you for doing what the rest of us couldn't. You didn't just stop her from stealing a house, you gave a lot of us our peace back. R. Mercer. I stared at the signature for a long time, let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Then I folded the letter, slid it into my desk drawer, and went out onto the deck. The air was warm. The sun was low. The sky stretched clear in every direction. And for the first time in a long time, no one was watching.